start talking about, so you're saying numbers don't exist and logic doesn't exist and all this stuff, and then they're like, I've just dug myself into a bit of a hole here. Yeah. But of course, he's talking about two different things. The manifestation of some kind of universe creator is quite a different thing to a set of logical propositions. You know,
when you talk about from God, from a first cause to the Christian God, it's just non sequitur.
It is, yeah. Of course, he says, well, then you have to move on to other arguments. But it's so specific. I likened it into a video years ago to proving that humans exist as demonstrating that Elvis is still alive. You know, if you've gone a fraction of the distance that you would need to go, really, with regard to. I did a video years ago, and I know, Mathpig, you were saying about watching my video where I'd done some with the dinosaur.
Yeah, that was the one that caught.
There's a video that I've got. I'm going to look it up to see what it's called now, right, while I'm talking to you. But it was a video response to William Lane Craig as part of a series. It was a series of like 3 or 4 videos I did where I put a lot of work into these, and there's lots of different things going on. And I hung a fish on my ear? I think I sellotaped the fish to my ear. Now I can't even think why I celebrate why I hung a fish on my ear.
Bagel fish, maybe.
But no, I can't. Why did I hang a fish on my ear? And I'm there in front of the camera saying, "Imagine that I'd hung a fish on my ear." And there's like this. It's like a wet fish. It's like a bass or something like that, like a wet fish sellotaped onto my ear, or maybe I used a paper clip. Oh, what would I record those videos? While we're having this, I'll look it up. Let me see if I can find the video. It's a good video, actually.
Okay, I hope you can hear me, Noel.
I thought it was a good
I'm
video.
Just going to
anyway.
No. When you find it, stick a link in, and I'll get the viewing.
I'd like to find. It was a series of videos that I actually put quite a lot of work into these. Right. The first video in the series was on Pascal's wager.
Oh.
Which I know sounds boring. But I sort of tried to do it from a bit of a different perspective. That wasn't the one with a fish on my ear. Religion Rebutted. That was the name of the series. Religion Rebutted. So, Noel Plum, Religion Rebutted. Number 2, William Lane Craig talks balls. That's the one. William Lane Craig talks balls. I've got the video up here. I'm trying to see if I can see where I've got the fish on my ear. Where the hell is the fish on the ear? I mean, there's not many video series where you've got a fish on your ear. I can't find the fish on the ear right now. Thought it was number 2. Oh, is this it? Oh, yes, I can see it now. If you look up, if you're on YouTube, Religion Rebutted number 2, William Lane Craig talks balls. You need to be about 3 minutes 50 in, and I've got a cardboard mask of William Lane Craig in front of my face, and I'm God knows what I'm saying, but I've got a fish on my ear. I wish I could. Can I post pictures in this? Can I take a?
I haven't set up for it, man. No.
Hang on. All right, there we go. I know what to do. This would do it, wouldn't it? This would do it. Look, here we go.
Old school production.
There you go.
I just put it on the link.
I mean, you've got to. These old gems, you know, they're still out there, but they get about 1 view a year, I think. Some of these old videos.
That one will get a few more now.
It might do, yeah. It was a good little series, that.
Well, if I can just say thank you to everybody that has joined, just get an introduction in at some point. Dave is here, we've got Spooky, we've got Manda, we've got Sal. Is there anything particular that you were watching the stream that I fucked up on, you want to argue with, or I missed out on, you want to ask Noel?
This is my first time. Thumbs up.
Well, I didn't listen, I was too busy watching the chat.
Oh, so we lost Spooky there. Thanks for joining.
So it begins.
Ah, yes. Dave, have you anything
No,
you would like to ask Noel? Since Spooky has nothing because he wasn't watching.
I did see most of it. It's just that when the chat gets buzzing, you get involved with chat, and I can't do two things at once anymore. I can't listen and type.
Well, Spooky, go on ahead. The stage is yours.
No, I've finished now. That's it. Off to Dave.
What do you think of where Anita is at now?
Anita
Sarkeesian.
Well, I have actually finally unsubscribed from her channel. It's kind of sad. What's interesting is that her partner stroke boyfriend stroke producer was a guy whose name I can't remember, who came out with more outrageous things than she was coming out with at the time. I mean, it was like he was really into like criticizing. I can't remember some of the comments he was making, but he became a bit of a sort of internet meme. I can't think of what he was called now. But he started he started a channel up called something Detective, Cultural Detective or something like that on YouTube. But it's not obvious it's him. It's his voice, but there's no reference to who it is. His channel now has it's probably got about 600,000 or 700,000 subscribers now, and he gets loads of like his has took off. Hers has died on its arse. The whole feminist frequency thing. Mind you, it became. I don't know if you watched any of the sort of later feminist frequency stuff. It was just they had to have everything. I had to have a trans person on every episode and a person of color on every episode, and it was all sort of just wallowing in angst and depression and all this kind of stuff every episode, how terrible the world is to the people who are on the so it just became, I think, a bit boring. It was nothing, they weren't really saying anything. It was just the same old shit.
I just dipped in and out of the Sarkeesian stuff because everybody was covering it at the time. You know, like she did stuff, people would like comment on it, and you know.
Yeah, and some of the comments were petty, and they were. I mean, I remember Thunderfoot just kept making video after video on it, and it was.
I think he begrudged how much money she was making.
Yeah, he possibly did. Although this is the perfect example of how this system works, which is that everybody feeds off everybody else. She benefited from the Thunderfoots of this world. There is no doubt about that. And the Thunderfoots of this world benefited from the Anita Sarkeesians of this world, and they're like treading on each other, but it kind of works, you know. It's like they're using each other, giving each other a sort of a foot up the ladder. It's a strange system that the internet just seems to foster now, and it's not useful because it doesn't look for common ground, and it doesn't look for answers or solutions, or maybe there is a bit of truth in this. I did a response to Anita Sarkeesian on a video, Women as Reward, and I did a 3-part series on that, and the first part was the main objection I had to the video she'd made. The next one was like 3 or 4 other little objections I had, and then the third part was the bits that I agreed with her about. Right, it was the bits where I said, actually, it's not like this video's all bollocks. Actually, some of the things she's saying is there's actually probably some truth in this, and we could do things a bit differently. But there wasn't a lot of that going on because that doesn't work, does it? That's not playing the game. I was supposed to make a video just going, wow, let's all dump on Anita Sarkeesian. And then she'd make a video going, well, people are, you know, saying everybody's got a dump on me and that they're bullying me just for being a woman on the internet expressing my views. And that's how the game is played. But once that was drawn away and all that vitriol was drawn away, boom, a channel and her status just went because it was based upon really nothing. Yeah. It was just based upon all that hot air, really.
Well, drama sells. You know, it's a phrase for a reason. Like.
Yeah.
Looking back at all the people, is there one person that you could think, or you know, that would? Do you know of a particular shit stirrer? Is there somebody that you could say, or
cunt is what you're asking, isn't it? Really?
Have you heard?
I wanted to go the other way and ask who he missed.
There's been
around.
I was going to say, have you heard of Essence of Thought?
Yes, I have. I heard of.
Oh, Spooky's gone again. His connection is terrible.
Yeah. Obviously, I was a leading question.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm totally snippeting this and making a 5-minute episode. So whatever you say, Noel, you know.
So biggest cunts, Essence of Thought. Essence would be up there. If you're obviously familiar with some of my interactions or grievances with him recently. That stemmed back, 3 years, I think, 4 years maybe now. They made a video. He accepts all pronouns, so let's stick with him.
He does.
He makes I always have to say that though, because there's always somebody who doesn't know that, who then just transphobe, blah blah. He made a video a few years back on no platforming, which is so bad that he's taken it. No, he hasn't taken it down. He's unlisted it.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way you can get to it via my video response. He then made a video response to me, but they were so long. It was like 3 40-minute videos, and at the end of the first video, I'd started detailing a response back, but I was waiting for the other two. But then it was like another month and a half, and I just lost the will by the end of it. I didn't even watch the second two because there's such a delay. But it was such a crap video. It got absolutely panned, including people who were quite well thought of at the time. I don't know if you'd know. Do you know D. Landon Cole?
No.
Many of you heard of him. Really clever guy. Another guy, Richard Firth Godby here, who had a channel called the Emu Story or something like that. Really clever people who just said, who were involved in the academy, who said it's just talking shit here. And he was really. What he was saying is saying that, well, universities don't have to provide a platform. You can't just walk up to a university and demand a microphone and demand an audience. And it's like, no, you can't.
That's how Jesse Lee Peterson made himself famous. Yeah. Or no, Jordan Lee Peterson made himself famous.
But we ended up, that was where we first properly clashed. And he despised me from that point onwards. So when all this latter thing came in with the trans women in sport, I was already at the point where he didn't even really want to even mention my name. I was just this sort of person that's just so disreputable. I've already told you about this disreputable person 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not even going to mention his name, sort of thing. But I don't think he's the worst I've ever come across.
Actually, I was into Essence of Thought before all the controversy and that, and I quite enjoyed their outputs. It was like, oh yeah, I'd listen to it and mull over the stuff, and it was all pretty good. But then
I think they're a victim of their own echo chamber.
There was always. The thing with Peter was right from the minute he started. He made very good videos, and the arguments were right, but it was always tremendously hyperbolic. It couldn't just be that religion was just a bit out of order. There had to be. Even then, he was talking about his human rights and his right to exist as an atheist and all this kind of stuff. And I used to think, well. Yeah, I'd watch a video of his because I was always subscribed to him, and I'd think, well, I agree with you on your arguments, but just tone it down a bit. It's you're living in England. You're not living in Saudi Arabia or somewhere. Where's all this coming from? But that is the sort of mechanism that he uses really to make everything is the very worst it could possibly be. If you put an extra sugar in his tea, you're trying to poison him. You're trying to give him a sugar overdose or something. It's never just as it looks, But there's been a number of twats over the years. Really, it's been 12 years of twats. There used to be a guy called what was he called? The Atheist Antidote. I actually. later on, he's still got a channel, and he's actually okay now. He's a conservative. Really, he's more of a political conservative. He's more than that than the religion now. But he was such a lying bastard. Right? he just misportrayed everything and everybody's argument, and made these really well produced. Bear in mind now, YouTube is awash with well produced videos.
Oh yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. But back in the day, there was none of that, and he was producing these videos where, like, he'd come on, it would be like a comic strip, and he'd be one frame of the comic strip, and it'd zoom in, it'd zoom back to the comic strip, and it would move on, and it was like really cleverly done, you know. But it was all bollocks. It was just like such a like the lies, and he'd just lie about things that people had said and everything. But it's funny how these things go. Is that I got to the point where I couldn't stand him, and I told him, I said to him, I think you're an absolute cunt. I'm never going to engage with you again. But then time's a bit of a healer, isn't it? And a couple of years down the line, he spoke to me about something, and I thought, that's water under the bridge, that, you know.
I do think that that's something that we do have the ability, racking back to the interview that we had, but I think that's something that's we have in the UK is the ability to not take things just as serious. Obviously, there's them assholes out there, but you know, if you were going to brush everyone with a broad brush, I would say more people that I've met online from the UK can take a fucking joke, than the Americans.
Yeah, I think you're
right.
Well,
I think part of that also is religion isn't such a big thing here, whereas in America, it's like it's to the max, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Well, religion in politics, for instance, is a big thing, whereas in England, it's not mentioned.
Yeah, so over here they use it as a tool for votes, and that's what it's all about. And that's like the big fight, really, the main fight. They'll donate to those churches, and then the churches will say that Trump is God, and then they'll go out and vote, and more votes, and that really happens.
That's definitely a bigger thing, is it? There's that. Yeah, and you see this talking to people from the States, some people from the States, not all people from the States, is that they assume that that's the norm, that just religion is the right, and atheism is left wing, and that's really not the case everywhere else. It's not.
No.
It just doesn't work.
And it's not the case here. It's just prominent because the church is everywhere, and in God we trust. So everywhere you go, there's a church of some sort. No matter what state you're in, there's a church of some sort. So to say you're an atheist is ungodly, and it's more of devil worship than anything else before they understand what it is.
Yeah.
And that's your biggest problem in America. There's no education on what atheism, not being a belief is. They think it's like they compare it to devil worship, which is a belief, and that's the problem. There's no education on it.
Yeah, I think it hasn't reached the critical mass either. I think that's the difference. In the UK, it's reached the critical mass once you realise that a substantial part of your population doesn't believe in God, and you can't even pick people apart unless you ask them. Then it becomes kind of benign. It's the same as racism. If you live with people of all the same race, it's a lot easier to be racist than if you know people of other ethnic origins, because then you realise that they're just as flawed and as nice and as nasty and all the same other things as anybody else, really.
When you talk to the majority of Americans, they don't care. They don't care if one exists or not. They just care that the money keeps coming in, and that's the honest truth of it. It's a very small population that promotes their religion. The rest don't.
Promotes they vote.
Yeah, right. So they go towards what's going to benefit their families, what's going to benefit their children as best as they can. Everybody wants progress. It's just that somebody has a point of view, and they push their finger on that point of view until they get what they want. And it separates us. It separates us greatly, and therein lies the problem. You're allowed to say whatever you want, but you have this argumentative view that it's like, well, you could say whatever you want, but I don't disagree with it, and you believe in the devil if you don't believe in God.
Well, one thing, if I could bring in that, there was a video that, Noel, you've done quite recently about people being able to say what they want, but there is repercussions, especially over here in the UK, because looking at BritBox, which I think you only found out about, and Channel 4 that you only found about, videos that have been, these series that were out 5 and 6 and 10 years ago are now suddenly, can I say racist? They're suddenly racist, like Bo Select and things like that.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it's bizarre what's happened there, I think.
It's the racist thing is weird. The fact that you can't now have anything that is racist, even if you're confronting it.
Yeah.
I came up against the Scrubs episode where JD goes blackface. And he goes blackface with Turk going whiteface, and JD gets the living shit beaten out of him for it. And that's the point.
Yeah.
The point is, it was demonstrated as being unacceptable, and that is now considered unreasonable to show.
Well, it's like all aspects of sophistication, any aspect of sophistication in terms of working out what's good and what's bad is gone. It's just something is inherently bad now, regardless of the context. And I can't remember any time where things were looked like this. I remember when I was a kid who talked about the Alf Garnett shows, In Sickness and Health, Till Death Do Us Part, all that lot.
Yeah.
And the fact was that he was kind of racist, but he was racist against Jews, but he was a Jew, and it was like he wasn't being portrayed in a. In some ways, he was being portrayed in a sensitive way because it was showing that he was a fully fleshed character, but he wasn't being sympathised with. He was being shown for his bigotries, and so that was understood. Whereas now, that doesn't seem to matter, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's the same with this whole business that you have to say the N-word because for some reason, a word is just as bad if you're using it in an abstracted context to talk about its use than you are if you're actually using it as an insult. My 5-year-old kid knows the difference between those two things. So we seem to have lost that.
I personally didn't like, what do you call that show? Gentlemen, A League of Gentlemen. I personally didn't like it, for its dry humour and things like that. Bo Selector was quite good. I watched The Odd One and stuff. Again, going back to the interview, Bo Selector I thought did it very, very well. Because when they picked on someone because of their mannerisms, the way they went on, it was they picked on the person. They didn't pick on their skin color. And the fact that it's now not allowed is
the show that he would have to have made then to be okay now. He would have been criticised for then for only portraying white people. Yeah. And Little Britain, which was supposed to show the diverse body of eccentric people around the British Isles, all portrayed, or almost all portrayed by Matt Lucas and David Williams. There was sometimes a side character to get somebody else in, but effectively they were playing all these diverse characters, and they were showing the diversity of the British people by playing people from other ethnic origins as well. And maybe that Ting Tong character, if you remember that, maybe that was a little bit of a racist stereotype. But outside of that, it was just showing this sort of racial diversity. But now that's a terrible thing. They were doing the wrong thing, and the mind boggles there, because the things that were wrong with blackface, the othering and the separation and the trying to take people apart and to sort of make people, trying to denigrate people who were of sub-Saharan African origin, is the very opposite of what they're doing in these things. See, so how can you view them in the same light? It's moronic, really.
Not very long after you made that video, couple of weeks, couple of days even. It wouldn't have been that long. I sat down and watched Disney, or it may have been before, but I sat down and watched Disney Plus. The girlfriend has it. Hamilton had just come out, and it was promoted for people of colour playing white people, which is you laugh. You get the exact point that I'm making. I don't need to continue.
It's like hip-hop drama opera.
No, but I'm just making the reference point that I'm trying to. Yeah, I think by his laugh, he knew exactly where I was going with
No. I figured to break the description. Sorry, go on, sir.
But Hamilton is promoted, where at the same time these sort of shows are not. And the fact that it's now, even though that they were portrayed years ago, it's suddenly a wide brush that they're being taken with.
Yeah, but then isn't that the thing? Is if there is something intrinsically wrong with portraying somebody of a different ethnicity, which there would have to be if it doesn't matter in which way you're doing it. You could be doing it in a negative way or a positive way. Doesn't matter how you're doing it, it's wrong. If that's the case, then it must be wrong either way round.
Exactly. That's the point I'm making. But, I think, we're going to... Oh, no. I'm not even going to stop. But I think PC culture... I think sometimes people have went too far. I do think that, there is things that we need to do. And as Noel has pointed out, there's things that fucking matter. There's things that we can change. But making a massive deal out of such a small thing doesn't help the situation, because people from the other side can say, look, this is such a small thing that happened years ago. They're blowing it all out of proportion, mountain out of a molehill. Making small things a giant voice when it doesn't really matter doesn't help the situation, in my opinion.
Again, the problem is the media are doing that. The mass media are doing that as well because it sells.
Yeah. I know. Drama sells.
Yeah, and the thing is that you'll take something... This is what happens again and again, is that something happens in an academic context which has a specific, I suppose you could say, domain of application, and then it gets into the popular sphere and it gets misapplied. Right, it gets applied everywhere. A classic example of this is this idea of racism is prejudice plus power, and that's what the definition is. And I did a video on this a few years back where that's the sociologist's definition. Is it fuck? Right? In this video, I had 3 sociology dictionaries, and it's not the definition in any of them. And the 4th one was behind a paywall, and somebody in comments who had it put it, and it wasn't the definition there. It's the definition in critical race theory. That's the one branch where it was the definition, and that's because critical race theory posits this idea that you can explain almost everything in society in terms of white supremacy and domination, and everybody's experience is explained on this axis. And in terms of that, whether that's bollocks or not, it makes sense to view racism as that, because that's what they're trying to explain. That's the hypothesis that they're bringing forwards. But then that's not the definition for everything. That's just the definition from this tiny little sphere of the social sciences.
When it comes to
most it gets misapplied then to everything.
When it comes to most things, man, I had a discussion today with the child's grandfather about what's happening over here, because recently in this last week we've had 2 bombs and a shooting. And it's Northern Ireland as it is, but the conversation he was pushing towards me was so extreme, to the points of left and right and Catholic and Protestant and this, that and the other, to the point where I get up and I was like, look, I'm just going to go watch Peppa Pig with the child, because this is getting too much. And I got up, and as I was closing the door, I was like, man, at the end of the day, when people shout socialism and people shout capitalism, and this, that and the other, the only real way that the world will work is grey. There is no black and white. Everything for it to work must be good. Extremism doesn't work on either fucking side. We need to find a middle ground. We need to all be grey, because a mixture of systems across all boards is the only way to work. Nobody really wants to be an extreme. We all just want to get along. We need to find that middle ground.
Well, that's a classic example, isn't it, of how internet debate polarizes. It's all fuck capitalism or fuck socialism, and yet every functional Western society is a mixed economy.
Exactly.
It uses both models. Right, and every politician, even if you're a Jeremy Corbyn or a Boris Johnson, they're actually favouring a mixed economy of some degree, and you're not just going with one model or the other model. It's just, but the internet isn't like that. The internet doesn't exist because it doesn't promote people who are going to make arguments along those lines.
Well, as you pointed out earlier, man, you've nothing better to do because you've, not working at the minute. Us being in the UK, I'm lucky enough to get 80% of my wages with the chance of going back and forth part-time. We have that socialist side where I know the roof above my head is okay. I have a mortgage break that I'm allowed to take. I think quite recently in the UK now, as of Monday past, if you sign up as a restaurant, if you sign up for this government scheme, Monday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays are all half price for the consumer, and the restaurant then claims it back to try and help improve the economy, get back out again. Yes, man, you get a McDonald's Big Mac for one. You get a Big Mac for $1.50.
Yeah, it's real popular.
You know, McDonald's was the first people to sign up for this to get people back, because it drives business, it drives economy, and these are the things that work. Not that I support Boris Johnson, but, you know, there is certain aspects of what has happened during the COVID that we are taking a benefit from. Where in America, unemployment is up, people don't know what to do, they're pushing people to go back, the kids to go back to school.
It's a real bad here.
Yeah, kids have to go back to school so the parents can work. You know, it's...
Yeah. That's a practical reality, I think, part of it, that, isn't it? But that's the big divide, I think, that you see online with all these things, and it doesn't matter what the issue is, it's the same thing every single time.
It's well, at the end, I think I seen a report one time that a human being, as a socialist society, we can remember the faces and names of up to 100 people. Anything after that, you know, we're driven for tribalism. We have our cliques, we have our little groups, and I think we need to, you know, start being a bigger Venn diagram, start having these overlaps where it's to the point where we don't have this extremism, where we don't scream at each other.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think it's hard though, because one thing I've noticed online over the years is that even the most progressive people who are the hardest on bigotries as they see it and prejudices as they see it, they still exhibit the same human phenomena which they don't think they can get away from, which there still has to be somebody they have to demonize. And it could be ageism, or it could be just picking on the cis white man. But it's like we get a bit of a kick from it, a bit of a buzz. We need some group that we can demonize those fucking wankers, you know. And we have to do it, and we have to generalize and stereotype. And it's so inherent that even people who, to listen to them, they would tell you that that's the thing that they're most against. But they do it. And you just doing it all the time.
You know, as a man that likes the surveys, you know, look at game shows and things like that. As a mob, we will encourage the worst. You know, we will encourage the detriment of another person for entertainment as a mob, because everybody around us is agreeing with us. If I stood up and said to you, is it okay if I took a giant bucket of bugs and locked a person in a box and dumped them on it? They would say, that's fucking cruel. But if you asked UTV and showed it to 1 million people, they think it's entertainment and they encourage it.
Yeah. No, I remember growing up, and I grew up a working class family. My dad worked as a supervisor in a fertilizer factory, but I'd hear people talk, and I always thought it was sort of odd growing up. It was the same thing, same phenomena, which was that there was always the sort of class battle. The people who were middle class or upper class, but there's hardly any of them. But so middle class were expected to sort of talk in sort of measured terms about everybody and being inclusive. But on the left, the working class people could be like the middle class wankers, right? It was like that was acceptable for the working class to just hate the middle class, hate the upper classes. They're a bunch of bastards, right? They're all a bunch of. That was sort of that was like, for them, that was an acceptable bigotry. That was an acceptable prejudice. You could generalize, you could stereotype, you could call them all shit. And I think that's what happens, like, for every group. It doesn't matter how, to use the sort of modern phrases, sort of woke or progressive they are. There's always some group who you can justify. There's a sort of justify. No, it's okay. Yeah, we're doing it about that group, but that's okay. Right, we've rationalised, while it's okay that we can use the same generalisations, the same stereotypes, the same put downs for that group, and I think it is. You get a kind of buzz from it, you get a kick from it, and it's sort of a tribal identity of it's us against them. You know, nobody can get away from it. Unfortunately, it's quite depressing.
Well, it's depressing to be on your own. It's nice to be part of a group.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So does that mean that you're always depressed because you're always on the outside?
Well, one thing I've always done is I've always separated what I've done online from what I do offline quite a lot. So I shut this down. And although when I'm on my own in my thoughts, I'm often thinking about what I'm doing online. Sort of socially, I don't talk about the things I talk about online, offline. You know, yeah. I've always very much separated those two things. Which is part of what I did online, because some of the things I wanted to talk about online, I couldn't really talk about offline, because people would just say, you're a boring twat.
I do promote the channel to people I know online. You know, if I meet someone, as I say, I have the license plate in the car, it does drive conversations, and I try and, you know, not to say get people to watch for views or anything, but I think that we have good conversations here, and having that interaction with someone that I've met in real life that then watch this, seen the conversation that we've had, and can come back to me and go, you were full of shit last night, you know that, you know. My own mother watches these things, and last Thursday we struggled for the first 20 minutes for an open hangout, you know, before people come in that we were controversial with, and she was like, you were fucking shit for 20 minutes, could you not have thought of something better, you know?
It's some good honesty there.
No, very good honesty, but you know, I've lost my trail of thought because we've laughed now. But we try and promote this.
Do any of your real life friends watch you?
Oh yes, this is the point I'm making. When I went back to work last week, Dave, you reminded me. When I went back to work last week, the owner of the business, which is in the particular field that we are in across Northern Ireland and Ireland, we are the biggest in what we do. We've over 60 depots and this, that, and the other. I'm not promoting them because they're a bunch of assholes. But the owner turned up at work. The owner of the whole fucking thing. And I was loading tires into the back of the van, and he was like, oh, so you enjoying your time off, or you're getting paid to do fuck all and this, that, and the other? And I was like, no, I've taught myself how to do live stream productions, this, that, and the other. He's like, well, what should I look up? I was like, we should look up Mathpig. And I promoted it to the owner. Now, he hasn't spoken to me fucking since. I haven't seen him since. But as Dave will tell you now, quite recently on the channel, I've started doing Mathpig shorts, because he was like, well, what have you got that's 10, 15 minutes long? Are they any good? And I was like, man, they're 2.5 hours long. We have these discussions. It's something. And the point I'm making is I do promote what I do to people in real life, because I want to start these connections. So I have a separation to the point where I'm a fucking floaty head. But the people that I meet in real life, I have these conversations with. So it's no detriment to me for them to know who I am on the channel. Sometimes it can be a detriment for the internet people, because they could dox you and all that, but I do promote it in real life. I do push it.
I've for my part, I've never really done that, because I kind of started on YouTube for the opposite. I wasn't getting the conversations that I wanted. But most people I work with know what I do. In fact, sometimes if I'm at work, so we're sat around the table and there's maybe a meeting going on or something. It's in the fire service. So we're sat around the table, there's a meeting going on. And I'm always one of the ones that, believe it or not, always asks questions or wants to make a bit of a statement about something. And sometimes somebody will say, if I get a bit too animated or a bit too sort of florid in my language or something, they'll go, you're not on fucking YouTube now. Right? Yeah. So I get that. I do get that sometimes. But I think I've done it for that long that people sort of who work with me have sort of, from the minute they started, because I've been on the watch that I'm on longer than anybody else, so they've sort of known that from the start. So it's just sort of just something that I do. That's Jim. That's my proper name, Jim. That's Jim's second job, sort of thing. That's what he does, and it's just taken like that, you know.
Watching as long as you have, man, and been 12 years, what is the biggest change in the approach that people have had? And don't fucking tell me it's just a repeat this 5th time. I really don't. But have you seen different approaches? Have you, as the internet has evolved, you know, and we've had this ability, we went through Google Plus and forums to then Google Plus. Now we're all using StreamYards or whatever the fuck. The biggest change really for atheism in YouTube was at 2012, definitely, when and at the time we thought that it was something that could have been avoided, and I don't think it could have been, which was this whole business when you probably weren't around sort of in the space then, but when Thunderfoot and a number of other people
went to free thought blogs, and it all went badly wrong. And there was this thing
Atheism
called
Plus.
Elevator Gate with Rebecca Watson, and there was Atheism Plus, and all that lot. And there was this big split, and everything became a lot more political. I mean, there were people that I've been friends with for 4 years on YouTube who'd comment on my videos. I'd comment on those. We got on really well, and then all of a sudden, there's a couple of them who've never spoken to me since, because suddenly they realised that I wasn't. In one of the cases, I wasn't a hardline Marxist, effectively, and that just. So I wasn't somebody to be spoken to anymore, which to me is just kind of just ridiculous. But it was like all these subjects which hadn't been talked about, all of a sudden everything started being talked about, and the conversation it just drove a split that has never really been mended, you know. And I think that's part of the fact that a lot of things were. A lot of what was going on was centered around something which fundamentally wasn't important enough to hold it together. And people had issues that they were more interested in than atheism. And so when they got involved in these atheist circles or sometimes skeptics groups, that wasn't really what they wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about politics, right? And particularly sort of sociopolitics, gender, race, all this kind of stuff. That's the things they were interested in. So if they joined a group, I mean, I remember there was a post on Free Thought Blogs, a classic post which I pulled up in a video, where this woman called Ashley Miller had joined the skeptics groups, and she joined the Skeptic Society, and she said, this was right at the start of Atheism Plus, she said they were interested in things like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and stuff like that. I wasn't interested in those things. I wanted to be skeptical about race and the positions of women in society and all this kind of thing. And they weren't interested in that. And it was like, at the time, I remember I said in this video, I said, it's like joining a tennis club and saying, I don't really give a fuck about tennis. I want to play golf. You know, everybody needs to start playing golf, and they're going to say, tennis club.
I can understand that, man. I've watched streams within this last 2 weeks, you know, and I've seen them on a certain topic, and after 30 minutes or 40 minutes with particular topics, it has now become who you voting for, this, that, and the other. And it does, you know, atheism, leftism, politics from the left wing, they do get conflated, but at the end of the day, atheism is one question, and it's not an umbrella, it's not a world term.
The problem with some of these subjects is they're all valid subjects. I mean, the things that they were talking about with Atheism Plus and that they wanted to make everything about, they're all valid subjects, and they're all probably subjects that in many ways were more important. But there are dozens of venues to already talk about them. You don't have to make every single thing about those things. You know, if it's a basket weaving society or a classic car collection society, then what's wrong with it just being about those things? Why does it have to be about the position of women within, you know, classic cars?
Again, I think it falls back in the point, man, that as a lot of people, especially when it's from the internet and then we go to these conventions, in real life we are surrounded by these people who disagree with us. You know, and it's really good to get to that community, to feel comfortable, to know that you can just ramble and talk and scream and be yourself because you've been yourself online with these people, and you can't say certain things to certain people in real life because of it. You know, like yourself, you like to chat and I like to chat, and some people are vocal, but a lot of people that we meet online are introverts, you know. They have this connection online because it creates a distance. It creates a separation between us, which makes it easier for them.
Well, the whole sort of conference setup that they had, which was quite a big thing then. There was several different events that were taking place every year, and they were really popular. That just fell to pieces. And the interesting thing was, when you think about people taking offence online, which is a really big thing now, and it seems that people take offence at the drop of a hat, is that there were all these different people attending these events, and some of them were right-wing, some of them were left-wing, some of them were like libertarians, the Michael Shermers and the Penn Gillettes, I think, were quite hardline libertarians. And they were all actually getting on okay, generally. They were drinking or having fun, and yet all of a sudden, they were all taking offence at one another. It's like they couldn't stand each other's company anymore. They were all just sort of, you know, they had to be persona non grata sort of thing. And you think, how much of that's genuine, right? How much of that offence is actually genuine, and how much of it is a sort of redefining your tribe and sacrificing maybe a larger tent? That's gone now. So what you are going to do is you're going to make sure it's kind of, I suppose, like the classic sort of girls in the playground thing, where you're going to make sure you're in with a little in-group at the expense of somebody else. But these people had got on fine. They'd had a really good time. You can see they'd all got drunk together. They were having a fucking good time a lot of the time. And then all of a sudden, you think, well, something's not right here.
I can agree with you on that, man, because from a personal note, you know, whenever I was in high school, as you know, and Dave would know, and Spooky would know maybe, you know, or Spooky will know, obviously, you know, when we grew up over here in the UK, we do have RE. We have religious education in the high school. You know, we do get taught this. And growing up in, you know, I went to high school in around the early 90s. It's still got that vitriolic and things like that. You know, there is still the ability to sit where you want. So you have the Protestant tables, the Protestant area over on one side of the group, and you have the Catholic area over on the other side of the group. And my mother encouraged me to go to a mixed church, the Salvation Army, which accepted both, made no difference to me. But I know when I went to RE class, I sat with the Catholics, and I have been known to make a paper airplane that says IRA and throw it at the prods, because it was fucking hilarious to watch them explode. Because in RE class, as we discussed earlier in the interview, the DUP, you know, that sort of belief becomes completely incompetent. Yeah. It is all they believe about. Where when you go and sit in the, you know, on the other side, they were more about having the crack, more about having fun, and they were like, "Did you do this last night? Did you go out there last night? Did you know there's a nightclub that we can go to that's got, you know, and this, that, and the other?" And it's like you have more fun winding up my own kind because they took it so fucking seriously.
Yeah. That's very much sorry.
In my RE class, I went to Catholic school. I had to write out the Gospels longhand.
I was going to say, because this is something that shocks a lot of people. My wife was a head of RE in a school.
Oh, really?
She's not religious. She doesn't believe in God. She took at university a combined history geography, and then. But because it's all humanities subjects, then she moved into RE, then she took a post as head of RE. But RE teaching's quite different in England, I think. I mean, you certainly wouldn't have anything like you would have in Northern Ireland there.
Well, as it stands now, as I were making a reference back earlier, man, with the Catholic schools and the secular schools and stuff like that, the Catholic schools are regarded, as you mentioned earlier, with you know, they are slightly... They refer to themselves as a grammar school, and a grammar school rather than another one, you know, it's a slightly better level. They do get better teachers. They do pay better as well. You know, it's not like the Catholic Church is short of any money. But to teach in a Catholic church over here, which is predominantly a large area, you must have an RE degree. You must, and you know, quite recently there was the University of Ulster that took on this degree. There was only one other university that taught it, because there's a high demand now for it, because there's teachers needing jobs. But you must have a religious, you know, you must have a religious degree to teach in a Catholic school. Like.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, certainly not. It's quite different from the British, from the English experience.
It's not as far as Answers in Genesis, where you must make a declaration. Yeah. But the fact that you must go through that and use these reference points is. Richard, if I can just say thank you for joining, and I'll let Noel go on ahead.
I was just going to say, my wife always taught it, or when she went into the school to as a sort of head of RE, she changed to a different syllabus, and she tried to teach it. In fact, she renamed it Morals and Ethics, and she still had to teach the religious component, because that's the law.
Yes. And
she still had to prep them for the exam, but what she would teach is, so she'd teach a subject like euthanasia. And what she'd do is she'd talk about the subject and she'd give examples of it, and she'd get the kids to give all their things. And then what she would do is she'd just introduce religious perspective. So she'd say, what might a Christian believe about this? What might a Muslim believe? What might a Hindu believe about this? And then she'd explain to them, well, this is why a Christian might believe this. This is why a Hindu might believe this, or whatever. So she'd teach that, but that would just be a component of a bigger sort of moral discussion on these different issues. And really, like she said, that was really the only way to teach it in a place like, because she teaches in Grimsby. I live in Louth, she lives in Grimsby in Lincolnshire, and the level of religiosity is that low. Right, it's just like, you know, you start talking about God and they just start laughing at, like, you know,
who gives a fuck? Like,
in Santa next, you're going to be asking us about how he gets all his presents ready, sort of thing. It just doesn't figure.
Yeah.
So,
if somebody talks about sort of religion, it's like being approached by the nutter on the bus.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, well, this is, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, bringing it back, you know, making it personal to myself, like as I mentioned earlier in the interview, that my daughter is Catholic, her mother is Catholic, they are from the south of Ireland. So, you know, from certain retrospects, her auntie sleeps with her rosary.
Does your daughter believe in God?
Pardon?
Does your daughter believe in God?
So, ignoring Dave, I've had these conversations with her mother.
Your daughter is not
where we went
Catholic.
straight to
You're not giving
you
her
want
that
me to
label.
kick you? I'll just mute you, or I can kick you. It's up to yourself. Like. So, you know, we've had these conversations where it's got to the point where she agrees with everything where I don't say the word God. And then at the very end, you're like, right, change this word to God. And it's like, oh, no, can't do that now. You know, I'm banned from talking religion with a certain auntie of her family because they're from the south of Ireland. But if you look at the south of Ireland as a progressive, as how it's going with laws and things, I always use the reference of how they changed the laws on, you know, the LGBT community. People came back from universities in England, the massive wave of the young population that transferred back to, or travelled back to Ireland, so they could vote, so they could make a difference, you know.
Yeah. You know, when you asked me about stats and the most remarkable stats earlier on, there's a really good stat as well. I think it was again in a social attitude survey, which was showing that within 3 years in England, Scotland and Wales of, or was it just England and Wales? Could have just been England and Wales of gay marriage becoming law. It showed you the percentage of acceptance, and amongst Catholics, the attitudes had changed phenomenally. It had changed from something like 20% acceptance to 55% acceptance in 3 years.
Yeah,
you know, which is kind of phenomenal. I'm sure God hadn't changed his mind in that. So something had been going on there.
but there's been an awful lot of changes in Ireland. You know, between the abortion laws and things like that. There, you know, I personally know a guy that I've interacted with who would refer to himself as an old Earth creationist. You know, it got to the point, as I say, with talking in real life. His son came to work. His son obviously went home and told his dad, and then his dad came to work on more than one occasion. And then every cure and everything that happened to happen with the father came, because we had these conversations. We did do this. You know, I've stayed an hour after work. The Richard Dawkins book that you made a reference to, I had to hold myself back, but I bought a second-hand one. You know, a pre-owned one from a church. Charity shop for £1, and I actually give them £2 because I felt guilty. You know, I then took that book and give it to the old Earth creationist and asked him to read it. And I give it to him saying, you know, I'm not a Richard Dawkins fan. I think he should stick to biology, but you know, this is worth a read, and it's good to have these conversations in real life.
Yeah, definitely.
Richard,
but I was gonna say I probably ought to get going now.
No, and, perfect, man. That's 100%. We lost Richard. I know he did have one question for you, but he has to have popped out. Noel, personally, from my own experience, man, I really do think that what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. It's absolutely fantastic. And fuck everybody that disagrees with you. As you say, forget the small things. They don't actually matter.
No point bothering with
no point bothering.
Listen, I will put a little link up. I'll tomorrow I'll put on my main channel. I'll just throw up a sort of 20-second video just pointing people towards our discussion.
Appreciate that. So, Noel, have you anything else that you want to scream about that you're making a video about that you're coming up that people should go watch?
The only video I've got coming up, I think I mentioned at the end of my last video, was that I made probably a video that I'm most proud of 10 years ago now, I think 2009, called I Know You Haven't Got Soul, which was like all the arguments that I could come across. Some of them were just in my head, and I've not heard anywhere else, as to why I don't think we have an immaterial, immortal soul that survives our death, or those qualifications to it. And I put them all together in a video. Then a video could only be 10 minutes and 59 seconds long. And the video was something like 11 minutes and 10 seconds. So I actually had to go into the editor and like make it put it at 101% speed or something, and it got it down to like 10 minutes 58 seconds. But the audio was crap on it. It was I should, with a degree in acoustic engineering, I shouldn't really be doing things like this, but the sound had clipped out, and some of the graphics, I like some of the old graphics, but they were a bit twee. The intro was a bit crap, so I'm going to redo that, but not totally redo it. It'll be more or less the same script with a few bits added on. Some of the old graphics, because I like them, but with a few bits sort of redone, because it's so like 99% of people who subscribe to me have never seen that, I suppose. So it's kind of
we only go back so far, man. You know, I went back as whenever the hair got long and blonde. There was a couple of videos for topics worth watching.
But somewhere it's like Einstein, isn't it? It's like,
and you tried out the green screen for a while too. There was the green screen and all. It was good.
I still do it occasionally. I did it on a video the other day. I had the green screen. I think it was maybe on the
hand grenade.
It was on the bad trans arguments the other day. I used the green screen for that. If I've got a lot of information to present, sometimes I'll have it so I can sort of have something here without it blocking out half my head. So I do occasionally use it now and again, but I don't use it as of right now.
Richard,
normal.
I will give you one question before Noel leaves, if Noel is up to one question.
Yes, go on then.
Go, quick.
Do I even have any sound here?
Yes. Quick.
That one was for Mathpig, though, Noel. Respect your brain. Thank you so much for the show that you do.
There you go. He stopped. He's done. Noel.
I would have a question.
Go. Fuck me.
Mathpig referred to me as the Ancient Aliens guy before. That's not completely unfounded, although it's shorthand.
I'll arrange a chat between you. You're so slow, Richard. I'm very sorry. He has been saying he's leaving. I'll maybe give you each other email addresses.
Go on. Let's go on.
If I said an intelligent lived off of this planet, never did live on the planet, gave the planet a message that they would arrive in mass, what would be the difference between that and Catholicism?
Wow.
He went off camera.
If an alien had lived on the planet, say it again.
No, never lived.
Say it again. It's like a riddle. This.
and intelligence that never lived on the planet gave a story of showing up to the planet in mass. What would be the difference between that, which I think normally people would call an alien invasion, and the Catholics' description of end times or heaven arriving to the earth?
I don't particularly know that I've got an answer to that. I don't know the particular Catholic eschatology. Is that the right word? In terms of what happens in the end times, but I don't. Where are you going with that? If I say there is a difference or there isn't a difference,
it's just thought provoking. That's all.
Okay, I don't know that I've got anything to add to that really.
Me and Richard have done an entire 3 series on taking Richard's views and applying them to old scriptures. We have done the David and Goliath story for series 1. We have done Enoch for series 2, and we have done the story of Gilgamesh for series 3.
Can I ask Richard? Is your position that some of the ways in which Catholics interpret Scripture are analogous or allegories of something such as you're describing there, so that they're portraying it in a very specific sense, but actually there's some general truism of some events that are likely to happen, but not necessarily true in the exact religious description of it. Is that what you're saying?
I only used Catholic as an example of a reading context that a lot of people are familiar with. There's necessity within the text, I believe, within a certain reading frame that makes it coherent throughout, but also requires that it's just fleshly beings from not on this planet.
Yeah. So you're saying it's perhaps in a bigger context than the way in which it's phrased. Yeah. I mean, that's the way that some people. So that's a reading of sort of Revelations or something like that. The way that people will also read back. I propose into the book of Genesis, and we'll say, yeah, that's not. You can't take a literal interpretation of it, but if you look at the understanding of it, then you can apply it to what we think is our scientific understanding of how things have come about. So it's not literally.
And with that, I would say that you're overcrowded with people trying to bombard you with requests, and I've been trying to get a hold of your brain for about 3 years now.
Well, that sounds very zombie-ish. And yeah,
not exactly.
Beware of zombies.
Why don't you come back on Thursday, where we have an open mic night?
If you do want to, Noel, open mics, that's what we'll do. We'll go around the room and stuff, and I'll start first. Open mic nights on Thursday, Noel. We open it to everyone, as we mentioned earlier.
Put it in my. What I'll do is I'll put it in my. Obviously, subscribe
same time
to
as tonight, 10:30. Same time as tonight.
And then, yeah, okay. I'll put it in my subscribe now. And if I'm around, that's that done. If I'm around, I don't know whether I'll be around this Thursday. I think I'm at my father-in-law's this Thursday. I think. But if I'm around and I'm not doing anything,
if you feel open to a conversation with Richard, he has his own channel, or I can have that open, or whatever. I'm sure there's definitely a lot of fun and crazy faces going to be made during that conversation. But
that was a hell of a question. Like just to start from a cold start, that question. That's the kind of question you build up after about an hour and a half.
You strike me as a tough man. It's okay.
Yeah. Richard's a good man, right? No, at the end of the day, no matter how much everybody in the community, regardless whether being theist, agnostic, or atheist, regardless of all views, everybody thinks, Richard is a particular person and he has his own views, but everybody loves him. You can't hate Richard.
That's like in real life, somebody saying, "I've got a question for you," and then twatting you around the side head with a pan.
But he'll help you afterwards.
And he really had to pack it in.
He will help you afterwards. So, on that, Dave has got some new quiz. The new quiz starting soon, Dave?
Yeah, we're starting next week sometime.
Yeah.
No, it won't be. The week after.
The week. Oh, fuck me.
There's a special episode this week.
Richard's always good talks on his channel. Everybody, Noel's links are in the description. Spooky, as always, will be wonderful in the chat. And Sal, as always, will be wonderful helping everyone else with their art.
Oink.
Oink and oink. So, everybody, I really do appreciate you coming tonight. Noel, massive thank you. I know your time is very precious.
Enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, on that note, everybody, we will oink and we will out.
Bye, chat people.